Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to discuss Shazam, the movie, because I finally saw it. I wanted to see it before. I was very excited to see it, just never got around to it, but now I have, and I believe it was well worth it. Obviously, I'm going to go into spoilers about things, but really quickly, I'll just tell you in generally how I felt about the movie. It is great. It's a lot of fun, but it's not just fun. It also has a lot of heart to it, too. I think it's a superhero story a lot of people can resonate with, especially if you're on the younger side. But I think everyone can understand, like, you know, understand where Billy is and comes from. Like, it's like, oh, he does all the things that you as a kid. Obviously, people always made reference to the movie. Well, is it big? I've never seen the movie, so I can't make comparisons. But nevertheless, it's a very worthwhile time, you know, watching this movie. I don't know, I kind of stammered on figuring out those words. Nevertheless, going forward, I will be going into spoilers, so if you don't want Shazam spoiled for you, I wouldn't watch this. You can always watch the movie, come back, and you can hear me, you know, just ramble on about some of the stuff and my thoughts about things in the movie. So, first and foremost, like, Shazam, another character I know next to nothing about. I've seen it pop up here and there animated-wise, but I'm just not that familiar with the character. I've learned tidbits here and there over the years, but not enough to really know the character. It's always interesting because I remember this whole thing in Young Justice of like, oh yeah, separating the adults in the Justice League from like the kids, you know, because Shazam's in that weird area because Billy is like a kid, he is like a teenager, but when he transforms, he's an adult, so he kind of has a seat at the Justice League. It's a whole complicated thing. I always thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Nevertheless, that's me going on a whole tangent, but it was really neat, you know, really diving into not just him as Shazam, but also, you know, getting to know who Billy is. I mean, because to be fair, it's not like they're two separate people. They are the same person. And, you know, diving into, like, you know, when we get introduced to Billy, we have that whole scene with him and the cops, you know, it's like, oh man, he's about to steal their cop car. It's like, oh, what a little shit. He's like a troublemaker. It's like, oh, this is supposed to be about someone who's worthy. Why would they? And he's like, no, he's looking for his mom. That was like the most gut punch. Like, oh my God, that's your story? It's like, yeah, his mom lost track of him, which immediately I'm like, his mom didn't lose track of him. It's like all these years later, she never found him. Like, come on. I mean, it didn't seem right. Like, is it possible? Yes, but especially because he's trying so hard to find her, you would think she'd be trying so hard to find him. So immediately my brain was like, she didn't want you, did she? And then later on, when it seems like, you know, like I am skipping around, so I do apologize, but it's like, okay, it's like Eugene ended up helping him. It's like, oh yeah, like we found your mom, and it's like, oh, she's like 2 stops away, your dad's in jail, which, what's that storyline about? I don't think they never really dived into that. It was just kind of, your dad's in jail. Maybe that's supposed to be set up of like, oh, his dad's kind of a criminal. Maybe that plays like something in his story, like a future villain or something like that. Maybe that's what it's referencing. Maybe it's just kind of character development. I don't know. I guess that just kind of makes it understandable more, like, oh, like it was all on his mom to be like, yeah. Well, I guess it also plays into the story of like, basically, he finds out his mom was 17 when she had him, and it's this whole complicated thing of like, well, just because, you know, she was 17, you kind of get that thing of like, well, you understand, like, it's not the easiest thing because also she got kicked out by your dad because of this whole thing. But at the same time, it's like, you had options, you could have given them up for adoption, but you see him with the cops, and you're like, no, I figured they could do a better job taking care of you than me. But it's like, here you are living your life, you know, now she's like, oh, I hope that, you know, everything turned out good for you. I'm glad to see that you're good, right? It's like, it's not even really you checking in on him. It's more so like you're trying to alleviate your own guilt by being like, oh no, he turned out fine. You know, I'm not the bad person, but you still see that, no, she does feel the guilt, especially when she looks in his eyes and sees the shame. And even when he gives her the thing, he's like, I think you'll need this more than I do. It's time for me to go to my real family, because that's the whole thing, because Billy ran away all those times because he was searching for what he believes. It's like, I don't need to be in these foster care systems because my mom's out there. Like, these kids, they need help. They're in a situation where they don't have anyone. Me, I got a family. I can be on my own until I find her. Like, she's out there. I just got to find her, you know? And that's why he ran away from every foster home he had. And so it's sad, you know, because it's like all this time searching for what he considered his real family, his mom. His real family was right there in front of him. Like I say, because that plays into this movie having a lot of heart, is what I'm saying. Now, what was really interesting is kind of getting to know our villain, understanding kind of where he's coming from. It's kind of interesting that basically his whole story is that basically he got mistreated by his dad and his brother. It was more so the situation of like, they looked down upon him. He was almost like nothing in their eyes, and it seems like, I guess that's something that kind of gets reflected a lot throughout his life. No one kind of thought he'd be anything or it'd be anything special. It's interesting, many different things. So like, one, his dad is played by John Glover. If you're unfamiliar, he played Lionel Luthor in Smallville, being obviously Lex's dad, which is interesting because this this, at least to my knowledge, this is the third interesting casting related to Smallville in the DCEU. There was like an actor that was in Man of Steel who also popped up in Smallville. I forgot, he was like a military person in Man of Steel. But there's also the dude, he's having dinner with Waller. He's like one of those military dudes in Suicide Squad at the beginning, that little dinner she has with them. He was also in Smallville. He played the role that Joel Kinnaman plays in Suicide Squad. He played that in Smallville. Just a little bit of interesting tidbit of information I thought was kind of fascinating. I'm sure there might be others sprinkled in, but those are the three that kind of come to mind. But nevertheless, it seems like obviously Thad was called upon, but he got sucked into the whole thing because for him it wasn't about the good nature in his heart, if there was any. It was so overpowered by his need to be powerful, because it's like power meant a lot to him, because like to him it's like, because as someone probably like small and kind of weaker in his family, it just, his family made him feel weak, so he wanted to feel powerful. So the 7 deadly sins, which is interesting, I didn't know that was going to be tied through this whole story, was the fact is that they were able to kind of speak to the darkness in him, his need for power, his lust for power, you know. So I thought that was kind of an interesting setup for the villain and whatnot. So there, and that basically strived to basically, that whole search for that being chosen, but then told you you're not chosen, it consumed his entire life to the point that it became all he built his entire life around it, you know. So there's that. Obviously there's Billy, you know, getting, you know, brought into his new family. Apparently he's run away, like I said, from like multiple foster homes. Interestingly enough, the foster dad in this case, and I might have brought this up during the trailers, but I don't think it's interesting, it's Jerry from The Walking Dead. I was like, yo, that's so dope. But nevertheless, it is kind of interesting to get little tidbits with his family, you know, and seeing them, this dynamic that already existed. You know, as someone who just, you know, because he already feels like an outsider in this situation, but the thing is, they try so hard to make him welcoming. Obviously, like, the one he spends the most time with is Freddy, and I love that whole dynamic that they have of, like, him just having kind of, like, he talks a lot, and it's actually kind of sad because he's up bringing it up later on. It's like, because he feels invisible to everyone else around him, so it's like, of course, I'm going to like try to do whatever I can to kind of stand out, you know, because like he feels invisible to everyone, even to Billy in some occasions, because Billy kind of treats him like he's annoying, at least at the beginning. But it's like, hey, you know about all the superhero stuff, so when the time comes, it's like, you know, it's you I go to about everything. And I thought it was kind of pretty neat. And I do like that whole, like I said, it's like almost a coming of age story in the form of a superhero movie without really being a coming of age story, because you grow as a character but not literally, you know. It's so interesting because it's like a kid who has to kind of become an adult who's still acting like a kid, and that's just all like the whole interesting aspect of this whole situation, you know. Because it's like, I love, because like it's just like I said, the premise is literally like, what if a kid gets superpowers? You know, he literally does what any kid with superpowers would do. I love him saving that woman. And he's like, oh, I thought that was you screaming. She's like, no, it was him. I sprayed him with pepper spray. She's like, oh, he's like, oh yeah, you kind of got this. You don't need that superhero. And he's trying to like, he said, yeah, don't bother her. I mean, she doesn't need protecting, yeah. And, you know, showcasing his abilities and stuff like that. And she's like, here's money, just leave me alone. I was like, no, I'm a good guy. And it's like, wait, she just paid us $74. It's like, what? I also love that being a thing where it's kind of like I mean, to be fair, there have been instances where like superheroes get hired for stuff anyway. There's plenty of examples of that in Marvel. There are probably examples of that in DC I'm just not that familiar with, but nevertheless, I just think that's pretty dope. And obviously, what do you do with it? You go buy beer and it's like, yeah. And then you drink the beer and it's like, ew, that's disgusting. Never mind, let's get some snacks. I love that, you know, like there's still that kid aspect to it. I also love, like, obviously discovering your abilities, like you're super strong, you can zap, even charging people's phones, and even the whole aspect of, you know, potentially, well, I don't know if I can fly, but the whole super speed situation, which would actually caught me off guard because I didn't know that Shazam was super fast. I mean, because a lot of comparisons is that basically Shazam is like Superman. Essentially is Superman, but a more magical version, which is interesting because like the DCEU, I think, is kind of taking an interesting step. Well, the DC movies, because like I said, depending on how, you know, the future of all the DCEU situation. But nevertheless, it's like they've set up actually an interesting balance of like science fiction meets fantasy, because whereas like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is more so science fiction with some fantasy stuff mixed in, this has like, I feel like more fantasy than science fiction, maybe, or like I said, it's kind of 50-50, because Man of Steel, Superman is science fiction, Batman is grounded, Wonder Woman on the more mystical, magical side of things, dealing with gods. Aquaman kind of borderlines that dude. He's considered a metahuman, but his abilities are, you know, it kind of goes back to kind of being like, I don't know, it could borderline science fiction or fantasy. I feel like it lends itself more to fantasy. The Flash is science fiction, Cyborg is science fiction, and Shazam being on the more magical side of things. You know, so it's just kind of interesting when you break that down like that. But nevertheless, I love the whole like, oh, check out, see if you're bulletproof. It's like, oh man, I'm bulletproof. What I also love is like, oh, we also got to check and see if it's actually the suit, which I think is kind of a nice little detail. It's like, maybe it's just the suit, or, you know, so shoot him in the head. He's like, yeah, shoot me in the head. Wait, what? And the bullets hit. And he's like, oh my God, I'm bulletproof everywhere. You guys are dead. I love that. It's like, you know, it's so much fun. Obviously the whole thing of like, oh yeah, because Freddy's like, yo, you're a superhero and everything, come to school so I can be cool and everything, even though he made such a point to be like, oh man, you gotta like, you know, keep your secret identity because, you know, villains will come after the people that are important to him. Like he tells that to like their youngest sister and everything, which I think that's just such an adorable relationship, because at first she's like, oh, hugging him and everything, oh, Billy, he literally walks in the door, he's like, oh, it's my new big brother, and like he kind of pushes her away. He's like, I'm not, you know, we're not really siblings, and she's like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, he's like, no, I didn't mean to hurt. And Freddy's kind of waving him off like, oh, it's okay. But it's like, the dynamic there just like super adorable, you know? And so, like I said, just like loads of fun of just Billy just showing off, causing a little havoc, even at one point. Him showing off with his lightning ability sends a bus spiraling. I even love it, that dude who smashes against the glass and he pulls out a like mattress and he's like, eh, and the dude's kind of like, no, and then luckily he catches it. And I love the whole thing of like the dog's there and he's like, can you move please, come on, oh thank you. I was like, that's so, and the dog's just looking at him and then finally gets up and slowly walks away. I love that. It's like, dude, look what I did, I saved the bus. Yeah, after you nearly almost killed everyone on it, yeah, but then I saved them. So I thought that was kind of neat. It's interesting seeing the whole situation with Thad, like, you know, our villain. It's so interesting too, like our villain was introduced and given powers before a hero. I feel like that doesn't always happen necessarily to a certain extent. I just thought that was just kind of interesting how that was done. I mean, obviously in some cases, like the villain's already on the same parallel power. Either they just don't unlock it until the end or near the end or the middle, or at the very least they've always been on parallel. Like Aquaman, they're like, you know, him and his brother were always even in power. They just, his, you know, just showcase didn't really show up until like later points. You get what I'm trying to say. I just thought it was kind of fascinating that Thad came into his powers before Billy did. And I did like that it wasn't just like, oh, I have similar powers to you. I also have the 7 deadly sins, which one, the first thing he does, grabs his brother, throws him out the window. It's like, you just murdered your brother. Then everyone in that boardroom, the demons ate them. That one dude got his head chopped off, thrown out the window. It's like, geez. And then finally he kills his own dad just because it's like, oh, all that you put me through, like, oh, like you kind of got to man up and stop being so weak type of thing. So, and like I said, it's just so interesting because like obviously he holds such a damn grudge in his hand that's what this is all about. I think that just, he's such a petty villain, and I like that because it kind of coincides with, well, what is Billy as a hero? Billy is very childish and naive, and he's just kind of very selfish. That's kind of the reflection of that. He's just like an evil version of that because he's just a selfish kid. Like, yes, he had a hard upbringing, but so did Billy. But Billy didn't turn into, well, let's face it, Billy didn't become an asshole. Yes, he kind of could be an asshole personality-wise, but he wasn't a dick murdering people like that. Yes, he almost murdered people on the bus. You know what I'm trying to say. So it's just actually kind of fascinating. And I think maybe that's the parallel that we're kind of going for. Once again, parallel being the word of the day. Actually, the word of the months or weeks, because I've been saying it like crazy lately. If you've caught any reviews, you know I've been saying it like nuts. I do like how the whole like Shazam situation does work, that you can just kind of like, Shazam, you get the powers, Shazam, you don't get the powers. I love, like I said, because I also love that it's not like Billy initially jumped to it. It's like, oh yeah, like even if this is magic and stuff, I don't think I'm the right person for it. But for him, it's like, obviously he's been searching for, the wizard in particular has been searching for like, at a very long time. In particular, he's been searching at least 30 years when they're framing the movie, because Thad was a kid at the time in like 74, and now it's like set present day, which is interesting in many different regards, because it's like we see like Thad, like I said, Thad had become obsessed with. He ends up finding out there were many other people that were kind of, you know, had this experience, a similar experience to him over the years, and I thought that's so fascinating. Obviously, not everyone can be aware of it, and I guess if you're not chosen and you try to enter the door or whatever, it's kind of interesting because like, remember the lady, she touched the door and then like she evaporated into dust, or rather ash. I'm wondering, is it because she was someone that was never chosen? I guess if you touch the door, that's one thing. Maybe that's kind of like foreshadowing to the rest of his family, the fact is they can go through and kind of not have any issues. I wonder, is it because Dad was chosen at one point in time, so he kind of had that, say, like, think of it like you have a pass. Like the moment you've gone in, you'll have a pass, and if you manage to find your way back in, you can go. Or is it just because he forced his way in and she ended up taking the, you know, one like security measure that would have killed Thad, but because she touched it first, he was able to go through? Am I thinking about overthinking this? Most likely. It was just something kind of floating in the back of my head. I also love the whole aspect, like I said, the whole secret identity situation, and the fact is that like everyone, his other siblings ended up finding out first. It's like, oh, I think Billy is the hero. And the youngest, she's like, thank you. Y'all were able to figure it out. It took you a little bit. Thank goodness you were able to figure it out without me saying it. So I'm still a good sister because I didn't break my promise. I thought that was, once again, she's just the most adorable. And then the fact is that, you know, Billy, you know, because he's, you know, he's still a kid. Like, and when it came to fighting Dad, he was scared. So he didn't take the opportunity. Like, he was kind of running. Obviously, it kind of comes into his powers during the fight and stuff like that. I love it. The whole, like, everything dealing with Santa Claus in this. Like, one, Santa telling that kid, it's like, oh, I'm gonna be here for you or whatever. The moment trouble happens, he throws the kid aside and he tries to run for his life. Second time, when stuff kind of goes crazy near the end of the movie, he sees the dude, he sees Thad floating in the air, he's like, run! And then literally the end where he's cussing up a storm, it's like, oh my, and he's just, all you can hear the bleeps and the bleeps and the bleeps. I love it. It was so good. And the news lady being like, oh, cut it. Like, he's, okay, I love that. So, but other than that, like, the fact of the matter is showcasing and working, you know, stepping up to be the hero in this, because I even love his justification and being like, you know, what kind of hero can't, you know, I'm not much of a hero if I can't fight for my family. He said something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I thought that was kind of neat. Like I said, it's just kind of interesting. Like, you know, what made him become a hero in the end was he stepped up to protect his family, you know? Because they were there, like, even when he was kind of cornered and whatnot, they were still there. They didn't have any powers, but they were there to defend him because it's like, yo, that's our brother, don't mess with him. And I thought it was kind of interesting because when the batarang gets thrown at it and it hurts him, I was like, oh, what's up with that? Because I forgot, because I thought it was kind of a neat thing. Like, basically nothing mortal could ever hurt Shazam, and I thought, like, oh, that's kind of interesting, unless it, because he's born of magic, nothing man-made can hurt him, with the exception of other magic. So I thought that was kind of interesting, which is kind of interesting in many different regards. So that made me think, like, oh, because it wasn't a real batarang, that was a replica. I was like, maybe that had it, but it still would be man-made. So I thought maybe there was a technicality in that. But later on, it's explained, the more, like, the demons leave, the more that, not demons, the sins leave him, the weaker he becomes because his power gets drawn from them specifically. So I thought that was pretty neat. But I also love the aspect of, like, that kind of explains a lot of interesting things too, like, because I don't know how he stacks up against most superheroes in, like, the DC universe, but at the same time, it's like, because I know, the interesting thing I was going to bring up is, because I know that's one of Superman's weaknesses. Yes, his main thing is kryptonite, and if anyone's on the same power level as him, they can mess him up, you know, if they have superhuman strength. But I know that magic is a thing that he's very vulnerable to. So I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of the similarities between Shazam and, you know, Superman in that regard. So I thought that was just kind of a neat explanation of, like, oh yeah, nothing, like, the only reason why I can hurt you is because I'm on some magic. But other than that, like, with him kind of out of the way, that means, like, a lot of other people probably couldn't affect him. But then again, it's like, well, maybe Aquaman is someone like that. The reason why Superman will probably be able to hurt you is because he's not mortal, he's from a different planet, he's an alien, so technically it make him different. Just like Aquaman's, like, you know, half human, yet he's also half Atlantean, so that probably worked the same way. Same like, you know, Wonder Woman, because she's part God, you know, so stuff like that's just kind of fascinating when we actually kind of think about it in the grand scheme of things. Nevertheless, I'm going off on a huge tangent, but still. But what really surprised me in the end is when Billy kind of pieced it all together about the wizard basically saying, like, he's the last of his people and everything, and it clicked in Billy's head, and I love it. He's like, everyone grab onto the staff and say my name, and everyone's like, Billy! He's like, not that. The other thing where it's like, you know, when I transform and everyone says Shazam, I was like, what? I thought, because, like, I brought this up during the initial, like, teaser trailer that had dropped, or maybe, like, the trailer. I think, whichever the case it may have been, I brought up a character I saw in the animated Flashpoint movie. It was Justice League Flash Paradox. Basically, there was kind of a version of Shazam that lets him, like, combine. It's like not just Billy, it's multiple other kids forming Shazam. I was wondering what that was about. I was thinking like, oh, maybe we're going to get that in this and your powers are all going to combine type of thing, which it didn't go that direction. Side note, like I think I told my, like I made a note of it. If I remember correctly, I think that character's called Captain Thunder, and I think it is specifically a Flashpoint thing. I don't know if that's in the general continuity or not, because I didn't know, because that's what I was wondering, like, oh, they're setting up his other siblings, so I was like, oh, do they play a role in this as well? But they do, but it's just a whole thing of like, holy crap, not only like, it's not like they combine together, they all individually get powers, they all become Shazams of their own. I was like, dude, that's dope. I was able to avoid that as a spoiler. That was neat. I was like, that's a nice surprise. And what's interesting too is it seems like his abilities, like they don't seem like they get the full range of, like Shazam's got all the power. When they get the power, it seems like they individually get different abilities. Like someone will have flight, someone else will have superhuman strength, someone will have the lightning, and others, one will be fast. So they don't all have his specific ability. I mean, even then, I still feel like we don't 100% know what Shazam's capable of. We know the lightning, we know the superhuman strength, we know immune to bullets, apparently immune to fire too, because Freddy was kind of a dick and set him on fire. But other than that, we don't really have a full showing of what he's capable of doing. I do like that, you know, the showcasing of the speedster aspect, when the youngest sister like grabs some people, like especially because like that Ferris wheel is falling, she grabs people, is like slows down. I'm like, that's so dope. That's like a Flash thing. Dude, I lose my mind about super speed stuff, so you immediately got me in that moment. But I also love, she's like, oh my god, Santa, like, you know, my name's, and I'm been very good. I'm like, it's so adorable seeing them like even in these adult forms kind of showing off. I do like that Freddy was able to kind of save his bullies. It's almost kind of like, just like, even though they're assholes, like, I mean, he still gives them, what is it called, the suitcase wedgie, where it's like they give you a wedgie and they hold you like a suitcase. That sounds gnarly. But nevertheless, I also love, because Billy is a kid, he trash talks a lot, and that's how he ends up getting the final sin, Envy, to come out. It's like, oh, everyone knows. The reason why the other sins are out doing things that you're not, because you're the runt. You're just pathetic. You're ugly. And it's like, that's such a kid thing to do. I also love, you know, I talked about it before, like just how he can change whenever he wants to. There's no limits to it. But I love that basically how he uses that. Like he'll be like someone might almost about to hit him and it's like, Shazam, I'll turn back into a kid, roll underneath your legs type of thing. Or like when Envy's on top of him, he goes Shazam, it sends out a bolt of lightning, strikes Envy. And it's like, oh, I'm free, Shazam it up again. I love this, how not only is it about transforming, you can also use it as a form of attacking too. It does seem like it has to be specifically the way it's commanded, because if he's underwater, like the command, I guess, gets muffled. He has to say it very clearly to kind of transform, which I thought was just kind of like a fascinating thing all in its own. But still, I do like that when it is all said and done, Thad is like, oh, I'm just a regular dude at the end of the day without the 7 deadly sins, and kind of compiling them back all into the spirit. And I love him messing with him at the end. He's like, oh, what? You'll give me everything I want. It's like, Billy, no, Billy, no. He's like, oh my god, you guys thought I was gonna do it? Me putting some like evil eye into my hand? It's like, oh, gross, no way. And it's like they're the heroes of the day. I also love that. I was wondering, like, are your parents gonna find out what you're up to? It's like, no. I'm interested too, like, to see whether there's going to be a situation, because I assume like that power's always there within them now, from now on. It's not, because you know, the staff is destroyed, but I guess like the staff was just supposed to be a medium of like, yeah, this power, like, let me share it with these others. Like, we're this council of like wizards now, like the more magical side of things. We're going to kind of be there, kind of protecting the world of, like, you know, this world from the dangers of magic, which I'd be so interested to find out what other danger that includes. I know that includes Black Adam. That also depends on what they end up doing with that movie that was supposed to come out. I haven't looked into it too much, so I'm still not 100% sure where that all stands. But nevertheless, it is kind of pretty dope. And it's like, yo, look at this place. It's a lair. Oh my god, we got a lair. What's a lair? But also, like I said, it's just full circle. It all comes back, you know, Billy, you know, it's like he found his home, he found his family, and not only a family in regards to just a family, but his family's also a team of superheroes, which is pretty dope. Like I said, I can't stress enough how cool it is. It's like, oh my god, they're all adults, like they're like him. So it's like, that's neat. I'm wondering if that's, like I said, kind of doing the Captain Thunder thing. Will it be a thing of like later on they can all combine into one? Will that turn into something or not? Or, you know, like I said, I feel like we still don't 100% know what Shazam is capable of, so I think that'd be kind of pretty neat. Also, the thing at the end with Thad, like, and that thing talking to him, be like, oh, the 7 dimensions or whatever. It's like, okay, What's that set up for? I don't know. I'm assuming some more mystical stuff, which is going to be interesting, you know, dealing with magic. I even love the little thing at the end of like, oh, no, I can't really talk to fish or whatever. Because I love Freddy's kind of a dick at first, because, well, that was more so on Billy's side of things, but I love Freddy was kind of like, oh no, like I'm a, he's like, oh my God, you're invisible, where are you? And it's like, and he's like, oh my God, look at me, I'm invisible. And it's like, no, you're not. But also he's like, oh, me talking to fish, how is that power cool? He's like, oh, I'm being able to control billions in the ocean. And he points to a shirt that has Aquaman. He's like, oh. I love that, which is funny considering this movie literally came out after Aquaman. But still, like, that's that DC joke of just kind of like, oh yeah. Because I think it's nice that they make fun of themselves being like, yeah, we know people make fun of Aquaman. Which I've always said, like, yeah, but most people are thinking old school Aquaman. It's not like he's pathetic out of water. He literally got superhuman strength. Like I said, they didn't really show it too much in the movie, but he can, like I said, do the whole, like, summoning water thing, like, manifest it, while also kind of being, like, a waterbender in that regard. Well, more so bending water, but he can also like summon and create it, kind of, I guess, pulling moisture from the air is kind of how that whole thing works, kind of like Mara does. Nevertheless, so aside from all that, there's also the little thing at the end, which I thought was kind of neat, because, you know, Freddy's kind of, everyone's looking at him like, oh, Freddy's a loser, but his siblings are all there. I'm like, oh, he's like, wait, you guys all have different, you know, lunch periods. And it's like, oh, we came here to sit with you. I'm like, oh, that's dope. And it's like, oh, hey. He's like, hey, Freddy, my best bud, my friend, taught me everything I know about being a hero. And, you know, it's like, oh, also these other kids who I'm meeting for the first time, and I know they're all pretty cool too. It's like, oh, I also have a surprise person too. And lo and behold, it's Superman. And he's like, what? Obviously, they show him from like the neck down, because at that time, it's like, right, it's sure the whole Henry Cavill situation of most likely not Superman anymore. It's kind of like a more so full-blown, yes, just like the Ben Affleck situation, similarly enough, but still that's kind of a dope little cameo to be like, it's still nice, you know. Which is also interesting because, like, obviously the little credit sequence I thought was kind of neat. The little hand, like the little drawn outro, like, you know, credit scene where it's kind of like, oh, him kicking with other superheroes. You know, it's like, oh, he's like hitting it up with the fans and stuff like that. And then there's like Aquaman and Batman and Superman, like him arm wrestling Superman. Like, obviously it's like from a kid's perspective, but that must, to me, I look at that as kind of not just being like a cameo thing. To me, depending on how you want to look at it, you could read a lot into it, being like, oh, that must mean that he's come, it's like, oh, he's at some point met up with the rest of the Justice League. It's like, yo, I'm a new superhero, like, yo, guys, what's up? You know, you could read into it that, because it could be like a space of time in between. Maybe Superman was like, oh, you did a good job stopping the bad guy. We need more heroes like you. Maybe like Superman's going around, maybe all of them are kind of going around gathering up other people potentially for a future Justice League gathering. I don't know. That's, like I said, that's just me thinking too much of it potentially, but still I thought it was kind of pretty dope. I do know that a sequel, you know, when this movie came out originally, because it did so good, like, was so well received, like, production on a sequel had kind of started fairly soon after the movie had come out. So I'm very interested to see, like I said, what they end up doing with Shazam 2, whether that's going to incorporate Black Adam, because like I said, Black Adam was supposed to be its own thing probably before joining up with Shazam, you know, which is interesting because, like, once again, I felt like, you know, like I said, DC's kind of doing more like showcasing like more villain stuff than potentially hero stuff, or at least kind of balancing it. So I'm curious to see where that all kind of takes us going forward. I'm very excited to see what a Shazam 2 is like, what kind of shenanigans they get up to. You know, like I said, him and his siblings, and, you know, now they're a part of all this too. I think that's pretty dope. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time, with me, be happy, be safe, live light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.